Mr. Secretary,
on January 5th.
Mr.
And why would that
Secretary.
be opposed when it is delivering precisely the result that you...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, General, for being here. Good afternoon.
Thank you.
I read this somewhere. I don't remember who said it, but I wrote it, but I remember it. It was once observed that a parent who stops loving their children, if a parent stops loving their children, the children will not stop loving the parent. The children will stop loving themselves. I know we can agree that we should encourage parents to be involved in their kids' lives.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure we can agree that we should encourage parents to make their kids do their homework.
Yes, although there's sometimes some resistance to that.
Right, right. And to make sure they get sleep at night so they can be ready for school.
Yes.
Here's what I've always been confused about. Didn't you understand the chilling effect that it would have to parents when you issued your directive, when you directed your criminal divisions and your counterterrorism divisions to investigate parents who were angry at school boards and administrators during COVID?
So, Senator, if you just give me a moment to put the full context, I did not do that. I did not issue any memorandum directing the investigation of parents who were concerned about their children. Quite to the contrary, the memorandum that you're talking about says at the very beginning of the memorandum that vigorous public debate is protected by the First Amendment. And the kind of concerns that you're talking about are, as expressed by parents, are of course completely protected. The memorandum was aimed at violence and threats of violence against a whole host of school personnel. It was not aimed at parents making complaints to their school board. And it came in the context of a whole series of other kinds of violent threats and violence against other public officials.
Let's walk through this. Your directive to your criminal division and your counterterrorism division came in a response to a letter from the National School Boards Association, did it not?
In part to the letter and in part to news reports of violence and threats of violence.
And the National School Board Association said these parents ought to be investigated under the Patriot Act as potential domestic terrorists.
And you'll notice, Senator, that I said nothing like that.
I understand, but that's what the letter said.
There was a reference to that in the letter,
Right.
something I disagree with.
And your employees helped them write the letter, didn't they?
I don't know anything to suggest that that's true.
I think it is true.
Well,
And the White House helped them write that letter, didn't they?
I don't know. I have no knowledge about that, but certainly I don't know anything about my employees
And so,
helping write that letter.
So you get this letter from the National School Board Association asking you to investigate parents that your employees helped write and that the White House helped write, and you issue a directive to your criminal division and to your counterintelligence or counterterrorism division to start investigating parents who are angry. What did you think was going to happen?
Say again, Senator, that nothing in my memorandum says to investigate parents who are angry. Quite the opposite. It says that the First Amendment protects that kind of vigorous debate. The only thing we wanted was for an assessment to be made out in the field about whether federal assistance was needed to prevent violence and threats of violence.
Well, one of your field, that's not the way your department implemented your directive. One of your field offices actually opened an investigation. You set up a website and a hotline to report parents. And
I don't think, we didn't set up a specific hotline about this. This was a reference
state
to the
Democratic
FBI's hotline.
Party official contacted you. They said that some Republicans were inciting violence by expressing public displeasure with school districts' vaccine mandates. And one of your field offices opened an investigation, which is a permanent part of their record.
Senator, I don't know anything about the specific thing that you're talking about. They used to say in high school, this is going to be on your permanent record. I don't believe there is any such thing with respect to this.
I think there is at the FBI, General, and you and I both know there is. There was a lady a mom in Michigan. She has a special needs kid, and the kid was doing pretty well. And she got upset with her local school board over its closures and virtual learning policies. And she went to the meeting. And she made an intemperate comment. She accused them of being a bunch of Nazis. Why would the FBI open an investigation of her?
Again, I don't know anything about the specifics of the case, but accusing people of being Nazis, while I find bad, is certainly not criminal. It's totally protected by the First Amendment. And I've said that over and over again. This is not the first time we've discussed this.
That's not what your department did.
Well, this is about the third time I'm being asked about the same memorandum, and each time I've said, and I hope that the senators would go ahead and advise their constituents in the same way, that this is not what we do. We are not in any way trying to interfere with parents making complaints about the education of their children. But don't
you understand, General, and I believe you, but don't you understand that this looks like you were just giving in to the teachers' unions and politicizing the disagreement, the honest disagreements? I mean, we only, as a result of some of our school board policies, we only experienced the largest learning loss for our kids in modern history. Don't you think parents had a right to be upset?
Absolutely.
Instead of, you implemented, what's a threat tag?
I didn't implement the threat tag. What you're talking about there is a part of internal FBI operations.
Yeah,
as far as I can...
You directed your folks, though, to open threat tags on these parents and investigate them.
Yeah, I did not direct that. My understanding from testimony by the FBI is that when somebody makes a complaint and it involves, if somebody gives a tip that a school official is being threatened, then there's, in order to look at trends, they mark it as a tip involving a school official. They have the same set of threat tags with respect to a complaint that suggests somebody is making a threat against a Supreme Court justice. These aren't complaints. These are tips of violence or threats of violence.
A threat tag on a parent for being concerned at a school board meeting?
It's not on the parent. It's not on whoever. It's on to indicate that a threat was made against, or at least alleged that a threat was made against, a school board member or a school official or a teacher or a school. Some of these turned out to be bomb threats.
Senator Kennedy, we're going to have a second round of questioning on behalf of Chairman Durbin, who has gone to vote. I'm going to call on...
You're blaming it on Durbin, huh? I understand. I apologize for going over.
I take full responsibility.
Thank you, General.
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Senator.
Mr. Secretary, do you agree with the President that we should ban the private ownership of assault weapons in America?
Senator, I do.
What is an assault weapon?
It is, for example, an AK-47.
Can you give me a definition other than just pointing to a specific weapon? Would there be other weapons besides an AK-47 you would ban?
There very well are. And I remember when I was a federal prosecutor in the Central District of California,
from September 25th, 1989 to, I believe it was April 2001.
And I thank you for your
All of
service,
the-
but if you
all
could
of the
answer
law
my
enforcement-
question.
The vast majority of law enforcement officers, leaders with whom I worked were greatly in support of the assault weapons
Mr.
ban.
Chairman, you know
because of-
why we get so frustrated with you? Because you won't give straight answers.
I think I just did.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. Do you have a definition of an assault weapon?
I am confident there is a technical definition of what is an assault weapon, and it was assuredly used in the context of the statute that previously existed banning assault weapons.
Mr. Secretary, our southern border is not secure, is it?
Senator, I have spoken about this. I believe I've addressed this earlier in the hearing.
Why don't you
Let me-
address it again?
Of course. Let me share with you a few things. Number one, when I speak of the security of the border, I am speaking of maximizing the resources we have to deliver the most effective results.
So
And let me assure you that we are
it's
doing
secure
so.
because we're trying to secure it. Are we succeeding?
Senator, we are so focused on the security of our southern border. We are doing so much with
But you're
respect
not
to
succeeding.
the surge of personnel.
How you're not succeeding?
Oh, Senator, let me share with you that the challenge of migration that we are experiencing at our southern border is not exclusive to the United States. It is something that is gripping the entire
But
hemisphere.
my job is to worry about the United States.
As
Mr.
is
Chairman.
mine. As is mine.
And here's my question. Let me try to rephrase it. And I really do wish, I understand the position you're in, but you really should try to do a better job of answering the questions. Under the Biden administration, we have the most encounters. We have had the most encounters with people attempting to come into our country illegally in the history of ever. Under the Biden administration, we have had the most people entering our country illegally in the history of ever. Under the Biden administration, we have had the most gotaways at our southern border in the history of ever. Under the Biden administration, we have had the most number of people entering our country under a claim of asylum, having that claim turned down and still not being deported in the history of ever. And under the Biden administration, we've had the most fentanyl coming into our country in the history of ever. How can you possibly say the southern border is secure?
Do you know
I
that-
understand your answer that you're trying, but I'm not asking about your efforts. I'm asking about the results.
Well, let's talk about the results then, Senator. Do you know that last year we expelled and removed approximately 1.4 million people from the southern border? I believe that's the most ever. Do you realize that we are focused on enforcing our laws to achieve the security of the southern border?
I
That
know you're
people-
focused, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Secretary, but you're not succeeding.
Senator,
And when you come testify to us, you talk about how you're trying really hard. And I don't have any way to disprove that. I accept that statement in good faith. But the numbers belie that.
If I can, Senator, let me give you an example of a solution that we have delivered that for some reason is being contested. Because it's
Mr.
caused a
Secretary,
95.
I give you 30 seconds, okay?
It's caused a 95.
Don't filibuster me.
It's
You've
caused-
been doing that all day. I'm just trying to ask
I'm just
you
trying to
questions.
communicate. It has led to a approximately 95% drop in the number of encounters in between the ports of entry at our southern border of Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans.
Mr. Secretary,
on January 5th.
Mr.
And why would that
Secretary.
be opposed when it is delivering precisely the result that you seek?
Did you just parachute in from another planet, Mr. Secretary? Because you're the only person in the Milky Way who believes that we're not having massive illegal immigration into America.
Senator, you're putting words into my mouth.
No, sir,
There is-
I'm
there is-
accurately describing the
There is
situation.
no question, that we have a very serious challenge at our southern border.
Okay,
It
let
is
me-
a
let me-
challenge
Well,
that is
we can agree on that. Let me ask you another question. Why don't you just declare a new policy that other than children, if you present at the southern border, you claim refugee status, you claim political asylum, and you haven't claimed refugee status and political asylum at the first safe country, then you can't come in.
Senator, so first of all, when one presents at the border, it's an asylum claim, not a
But why
refugee.
don't you do that? Why don't
Not
you
a
just
refugee claim.
unilaterally declare that a safe third country policy? It would work. You can't come into America. If you're coming from Venezuela and you come through Mexico, if you didn't claim asylum in Mexico, you can't come here. You have to leave. Why don't you just do that?
Well, Senator, let me give you an example with respect to Mexico. A safe third country agreement, let's hypothetically
you
assume.
don't have to have an agreement with Mexico.
Yes, you do.
No, you don't.
I believe you do,
No,
Senator.
you don't.
I'll have
Other
to-
countries don't do it. Just adopt a policy that says, except for children, because you don't want to send children back by themselves. Just adopt a new policy that if you didn't seek asylum in the first safe third country, you can't come in, period.
Senator, are you aware of the notice of proposed rulemaking that we issued, the comment period of which closed yesterday?
You've had 2 years to adopt a policy like I just described. Why haven't you done it?
So, Senator, what we have done is
But why haven't you done that?
we have surged enforcement resources. We have
Why haven't
developed.
you just adopted, please, if you would, Mr. Secretary, answer my question.
It is my understanding.
Why haven't you adopted unilaterally a safe third country policy? That would stop, except for children, all the folks from the Northern Triangle countries, all the folks from Venezuela, all the folks from Cuba, all the folks from the Middle East from coming into our country. Why haven't you done that?
Senator, it is my understanding that those are two things. It is my understanding that those agreements do require
You don't have to have an agreement with anybody. It can be a policy established by the Department of Homeland Security.
Senator, I'd have to review the.
You haven't reviewed that? You haven't considered that possibility?
Let me finish, if I may.
Sure.
I would have to review the legal underpinnings of your
Well, you
assertion.
better get reviewing.
And I also
You ought to
do
get
not-
reviewing. This is the first time that's occurred to you.
I also do not think that that is sound policy.
You don't
to
think
shut-
this is the first time that's occurred to you?
I also do not think that that is sound policy, that we should shut down our entire asylum system.
I didn't say shut down the entire asylum system. I said safe third country. All you have to do, Mr. Secretary, if you're really serious, and it's beginning, frankly, to appear that you're not, is adopt a policy that says we're not seeking anyone's agreement. We don't have to. If you're coming from another country and you come through, let's say, Mexico, and you say you're seeking asylum, you have to seek it in Mexico or the other first safe third country, or you can't come in. Period. Done. End of story. Why don't you do that?
Senator, I don't think that we have the unilateral authority.
Sure you do. Other countries
Number one
do
and
it.
number two, as
If
I've
you
mentioned,
try sneaking into China,
I do not think that is sound policy.
why?
Because you are basically shutting down our asylum system.
No,
and
you're
really-
not. You're saying we honor your right to seek political asylum, but you're cherry picking. Do it in Mexico first. Why haven't you done that?
I think I've addressed that issue, Senator.
You don't want to do it, Mr. Secretary. That's what it's beginning to look like, because you think our borders ought to be open, and it would be more intellectually honest if you just say that.
That is false.
I don't agree with you. You have to watch up here what people do, not what they say, and everything else is just cottage cheese.
Senator, I don't think
Thank you,
I don't
Mr.
think
Chairman.
the 1.4 million people who were expelled or removed last year would consider the border open.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary, you've had millions coming into the country illegally. The most of the history of ever under your watch. And everybody knows that, apparently, except you. Either that or you're not being forthcoming with
We've
us.
also had the largest number of individuals expelled or removed from the southern border. And if one takes a look at the apprehension and encounter numbers, and then the removal numbers, one would have a different view.
If you do the safe third country policy, that'll solve half of your problem right there.
Thank
And
you,
you're
Senator.
not denying anybody asylum.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Senator Ossoff.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Senator Schatz. Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, General, for being here. General, I want to ask you about the shooting at Covenant School, which is part of the Covenant Presbyterian Church. I realize that the shooter is dead, but the shooter could have had collaborators. Do you plan on opening a hate crime investigation for the targeting of Christians?
The FBI and ATF are both on the scene, working with the local police. As of now, motive hasn't been identified, and the police chief said at his last press conference that they don't yet have reached a conclusion with respect to motive. We are certainly working full-time with them to try and determine what the motive is, and of course, motive is what determines whether it's a hate crime or not.
Okay, okay. FBI Director Wray couldn't answer this at the time for reasons that are not his fault, but
I hope you'll say the same thing if I can't answer it.
well, I think the coast is clear now. Michael Sussman, you know who I'm talking about?
He was a defendant in a special counsel prosecution. Yes.
Right, right. He was with the private law firm Perkins Coie, which is the main counsel for the National Democratic Party. He had a special badge to get him into the Justice Department and or the FBI building. Why did he have that special badge?
I'm afraid I also don't know anything about this. I assume from the reference that this is something that Mr. Durham was investigating as part of his investigation.
No, I don't think he investigated the badge.
I know he was investigating Mr. Sussman. This goes back to, I think, 2020.
Right.
But I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. Could you find out for me? At the time, the trial was in progress, and Mr. Wray couldn't answer, but the trial's over. And I'd like to know why Mr. Sussman, a private citizen, had a special badge to get him into the FBI and the Department of Justice, and if there are other people out there who have special badges.
Well, on the particular question about Sussman, I think we're going to have to wait until Mr. Durham finishes his report, which should be relatively soon. I certainly don't in any way want to interfere with him, and he's the one who would know the answer to that. On the more general question, I can certainly ask my team to look into how lawyers have special badges.
Would you? That'd be great. Thank you. I want to ask you about the China Initiative, which, as you know, was started under the Department of Justice to counter the transfer of scientific research and intellectual property to China. At any time, did the investigations initiated under the China Initiative by the Department of Justice stem from racism?
I have no evidence to suggest that they did.
Okay. At any time, did the investigations pursuant to the China Initiative and begun by the Department of Justice, were they ever inappropriately undertaken?
Again, I have no evidence to suggest that they did. Obviously, some of the cases resulted in acquittals or dismissals by courts, but that doesn't mean that they were inappropriately begun.
Okay. Did any of the cases that the department initiated under the China initiative reflect the ancestry of the defendant charged more than the seriousness of the allegations?
I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, but it sounds like it's the same question, and I would give the same answer. I don't have any reason to believe that anything was done inappropriately or based on ancestry or based on discrimination in those cases.
Okay. Do you agree with Chris Ray that China is the biggest threat to U.S. security?
Yeah, and I think the Director of National Intelligence also testified that it's our most dangerous near peer.
Well, let me ask you this, because I've got 11 seconds.
I'm sorry?
I've got 11 seconds left. Why did you get rid of the China initiative then?
Yeah, so as you know, the new Assistant Attorney General for the National Security Division gave a long description of what was done. This was all folded into one nation-state initiative. We don't know sometimes when there's a cyber attack, when there's another kind of attack, which country is attacking us. And I believe he thought it was most efficient for us to focus our attention on the four main hostile state actors. China, now in many ways affiliating with Russia, which
Some of your people said it was racist.
I didn't say that. I don't know who my people are who said that.
Okay. Well, if I had more time, we can find out here. Help me out, Senator Manchin.
Senator Kennedy, there will be a second round of
Yes,
questions
ma'am.
if
Yes,
you would
ma'am.
like to stay.
Yes, ma'am.
Senator Manchin.
There's no way I could fill in for you, sir.